create this conference is that those statistics can change.
Why do most family-owned businesses disappear once the founder leaves the stage? It's a staggering reality. Despite being the engine of our economy, less than 30% of these companies survive the transition to the second generation. This survival gap is exactly what brings these top business leaders here to the 2026 International Family Business Conference. Hosted by the Lagos Business School Family Business Initiative, the summit is themed Beyond Survival, Governance and Culture as the Foundation of Lasting Family Legacies.
So I've been looking forward to today for many reasons.
The Deputy Vice Chancellor of the Pan-Atlantic University, representing the Vice Chancellor, opens the event, noting that a family's success shouldn't end with the life of its pioneer.
Okay, first generation. How many are first generation? Most of us. Okay, very good. So you know there's some data showing currently that out of the many family businesses we have in Nigeria, only 30% live beyond the first generation. And the question is why? I'm sure you've been asking yourselves why. Thanks to the Family Business Initiative and the work that they're doing, the insights are showing that there are two main issues. One is the lack of strong corporate governance frameworks, let's just call it that. And the second one is having a weak culture. And it's very good to see that these are the two things we'll be looking at in today's conference.
Professor Olayinka David West, Dean of the Lagos Business School, describes the school's initiative as a special purpose vehicle, essentially a rescue mission to help families navigate the dark patches that often lead to business collapse during a handover.
Family businesses are not merely commercial entities because they're interwoven with different nuances. And we need to acknowledge those nuances. They're living inspirations shaped by relationships, values, and a shared identity. And I think another thing in family businesses is you look at yourselves based on your family rank, for example. So I'm a last born. So you can imagine I'm the errand girl of the family. So imagine my voice. What does my voice look like? And so that's why you need to separate the family from the business. But many families do achieve early success, but far fewer succeed in preserving unity and relevance as complexity increases across generations. So the real question is not will we survive, the real question is will we endure with clarity, cohesion, and purpose. Governance and culture are the twin pillars that answer that question. And disciplined capital strategies are the engine that sustains and amplifies them.
Dr. Oke Onwoke, who leads the initiative, takes the audience on a walk down memory lane, explaining that the goal is to move from personality-led ventures to purpose-driven institutions.
Beyond survival. So we're talking about how do you create that enduring legacy. So you created those physical structures, you have papers, rules, who can do what. How do you ensure that those become how you do things? Even without looking at the paper, you do things according to what is in that paper. That's when you know you truly have a governance structure. Right? When people talk about integrity, what you do when people are not there to watch you. That means if you truly have a governance structure, how do you ensure that every member of that ecosystem does things in line with that governance structure without looking at the paper? Culture can create commitment. Capital can create stability, but you need governance to create continuity. Now, so it's now left for us to, what culture do we truly want? So when we talk about culture, we shouldn't take culture as given, or we want to hide under culture to take wrong business decisions. You now have to ask yourself, what culture does my business truly need? So it's our job as leaders to create and nurture that culture for continuity. So governance determines whether a business survives or not. When succession is built around one person, that person is strong, very good, it does not endure. That person will pass. Then what happens when he or she is not around? The greatest threat to family business continuity is not competition. It is unplanned succession.
The intellectual anchor of the day is the keynote by Dr. John Momo, chairman of Channels Media Group. He explores the DNA of businesses that last for centuries versus those that crumble in a decade or two.
But survival is not legacy. What helps you start a business is not what sustains it. And that is where many family businesses struggle. Which brings me to the key question of today. Why do some families build fortunes that last for centuries, while others see their wealth evaporate within a generation or two? But having said that, there are some families who have defied this odds for hundreds of years. So, what's the secret? Is it luck? Is it better investment? Is it smarter children? After studying family businesses across continents, I've come to a simple conclusion. The families that last don't just focus on making money. They focus on building systems. They focus on governance. And they focus on culture. Let me take you on a journey to understand what I mean. And some of this you know, either in school or reading literature and all that. John D. Rockefeller, first up. When structure becomes legacy. John D. Rockefeller was once the wealthiest man on earth. When he died in 1937, his net worth was approximately 1.5% of the entire US GDP. One man, nearly 2% of the national US economy. But here's what makes the Rockefeller story remarkable. Over a century later, the family is still worth an estimated $8.4 billion to $360 billion spread across over 170 heirs. That's massive. And so, what's responsible for this massive fortune? The answer? John D. understood something profound. That wealth without structure is like water without vessel. It slips through your fingers. John D. established trust structures, family trusts, charitable trusts, educational trusts. He didn't just give his children money, he gave them systems for managing that money. He invested in education, not just as philanthropy, but as a strategy. He understood that the best inheritance he could leave was not cash, but capability. And you know something? He kept meticulous records, every penny accounted for, and every charitable donation tracked. This wasn't stinginess. This was discipline. It was culture. To Nigeria, to Africa, because this isn't just a Western phenomenon. And some of the most remarkable family business stories are unfolding right here on our continent and in Nigeria. But of course, where do we start? Dantata, Dangote. Dangote has a vision to build $100 billion industrial empire and is preparing the next generation to lead it. Now let's take a look at one of Nigeria's engineering conglomerates, and very proudly so, and I know him too. The Apple Group. The owner is here today. There he is, Alfred Okoibu, and his lovely wife, my sister. In a sector dominated by global players, Alfred Okoibu's ACO built indigenous capability. not just business, but capability, systems, and technical depth. The company's operations are guided by core values like integrity, responsibility, positivity, and opportunity.
Drawing a clever analogy between business and storytelling, Dr. Momo notes that while the founder writes the first chapter, the sequel depends on three pillars: governance, culture, and a clear plan.
I see those three pillars as follows. One, governance structures. You need systems, you need trusts, you need family councils, you need shareholder agreements, you need clarity about who make decisions, as has been said, how decisions get made and what happens when people disagree. The Rockefellers had trusts. Rothschilds had their joint operating agreements. There weren't constraints, there were liberations. And they freed the family to focus on growth rather than fighting over crumbs. Pillar two, cultural continuity. You need values, you need principles, you need a why that transcends profits. And the Rothschild had their code of moderation. The Rockefellers had their commitment to philanthropy. The Croydons had their core values. What is your family's why? And what do you stand for? What will your grandchildren say about you? Not just in terms of what you built, but in terms of who you were. Pillar three, succession. Just like Dangote, you need to prepare the next generation. This isn't just about identifying a successor, it's about grooming that successor. It's about giving them experience, responsibilities, and yes, failures, before the weight of leadership fully lands on their shoulders. Business is ultimately a story. It is a story of what a family believed in strongly enough to sacrifice for. It is a story of values tested in difficult seasons. And eventually, it becomes the story the next generation chooses either to continue or to walk away from. And that choice is not determined by how much wealth we leave behind. It is determined by whether we leave behind meaning.
A fire chat session follows and a moment of appreciation. If Dr. John Momo provides the foundation, the panel sessions offer the tools for construction. A group of seasoned experts, moderated by Kunle Elebute, explains that governance is the ultimate lifeline. They argue that a functional board of directors acts like a referee keeping the business professional, even when family emotions run high.
For us, when we realized that the founder had a vision, what we did was to ask for help. So that was why I said, not that we didn't have governance as we are, but nothing was put on paper. But the most important thing is putting them on paper, being intentionally, as my fellow panelists said. What did we do? He had his own vision, but we brought together all the staff and our son. We went out of the office. For days, we looked at our vision, and finally we came up with what we said, this is our vision, this is what is our vision. And now we came out with the values. Having done that, we also came up with the Constitution. If I go through our Constitution, the values, the vision, the mission, and that of the company, they are in alignment. The integrity, the positivity, customer-centric. So what we did also for that governance, there's no way we would have done it alone. We also started employing professionals to come into the business. Yes, we did that. So we also start capturing it on paper. Then we insisted that jobs, schedule, things should be done problem. It is not just waking up, this person does this. Departmentals were formed because we know that when we bring in external directors, they will ask questions. Integrity is very, very important, as it were, in terms of finance, in terms of culture. So when is this the right time? It's now. Don't wait. As I'm speaking, we're still on it. We have not perfected it, but the most important is to start.
ACO was 20 years old, and we realized that at that time where it was more of me, my wife was busy supporting our children, and at 20, we looked at it, what is it going to be in the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years? How long will this company even survive? What do we even have on ground to support that? What we did at that time was to invite one of the consulting firms, at that time, Ascension. Please, can you tell us why companies in Nigeria don't survive 100 years? We hear about that companies in Europe, 100, 200, 300 years. Why is it not possible in Nigeria? We as ACO, we want to grow a company that will outlive us. That's our dream. So what can we do? Ascension told us straight, we must be ready to take the bitter pill. And the bitter pill is start with governance. Governance, transparency, and good culture. At that time, we just migrating from survival level. Survivor. Now you're talking about structure, governance. You heard from today, 20%, about 80% don't have boards in their organization in Nigeria. Family business, they don't have. So for many, it's waste of time and delay of processes for them. But after hearing from Ascension, we took it in, but we didn't implement immediately until 7 or 8 years later, 2008 precisely, we considered the first board in ACO. And that board took into cognizance of who makes the board, what are the values they expect. And this is where relationship matter. Whom do you know? What role has such a person played?
The conversation also tackles the succession struggle, the difficult task of getting the next generation interested in carrying the baton.
We are a multi-family office that is focused on supporting businesses, family businesses, in the journey to preserve and transfer their wealth across generations. For us, we consider this to be a burden of sorts because Dr. Momo had spoken about just what happens when businesses do not succeed their founders. And many times we think about it, it's a phenomenon that we are aware of, but the impact is lost on us. The fact that when a business does not continue, first of all, is the effort, the lifetime work of founders who have put in their blood, their sweat, sacrifice. It terminates. What happens is the benefit of compounding effort is completely lost. You have children who have to start from scratch because they do not get the benefit of learning from what their predecessors did. You have a society where livelihoods are terminated, education stops. A lot hinges on the continuity of family businesses. And we understand that succession sounds like a nice to have, but there's a reason why it is so difficult to achieve. And so we have made it our mission to help families navigate that process, to move their effort from them to the generations ahead so that the collective benefit can be achieved.
For us, family business is about your values, your trust, your shared responsibility. And so we were initially just two siblings, my MD and I. I was 18, she was 21. But the honest truth is that my mother had taught us everything. So we knew everything about our business. We knew all our stakeholders, we knew our bankers, we knew our suppliers, we knew our creditors, we knew our debtors. We knew everything. And so we built on that foundation. And we continued to do the business. of course, we started to do some personal development. I remember I had to come to Lagos Business School. I did OMP, and I knew that after I went seeing some of our customers, and they said, "Oh, we don't do bridges." I said, "I think it's time for us to expand." And so, about 20 years after, we believe so much in organic goods. So we opened our first second store in Awolowo Road. Now it was just two siblings, with our other staff. Now some of my other siblings have now gone abroad. They had gone to do their masters. They had gone for school. So on coming back, they say, "Tony, will you tell your customers to get me a job?" I said, "Okay." So I will tell Mrs. O, please, my brother wants a job. Oh. And there wasn't any job coming. So after that, I said, I think it's time for us to start expanding. And so we opened our second store. But before we opened our second store, our first store in Akirili, then we had really expanded. And by the time we opened our second store, I just called him. I said, "Okay, would you like to work with us?" And he said, "Okay." So, he started to work with us. After a while, some other siblings that actually worked in the corporate, my senior brother, so Int'l comes in and said, "Why don't you come and join us?" Now the good thing is that when he comes to join us, it brings in his strength. It brings in, it brings in multiplication. It brings in maybe things like our stock. We couldn't computerize it. It brought in a lot of intentionality, computerization. We're online, we were real time. We could see our stock, across all our branches. And gradually, so I tell people that today we are a family business. We're 7 siblings. We all work together. Our family business is over 50 years, from my mother. And now we are the second generation. We're over 30 years now, and we're still standing. We're growing strong. We're expanding. We're being very intentional. We're working with a lot of we're outsourcing a lot of our functions. And because there was something I said at the beginning, I said for me, the family business is based on the values of excellent customer service. And those were things we got from our mom. It's based on the values of integrity, of the values of hard work, and on the values of fairness. And when I talk about fairness, I tell people say, "Oh, if you go to your Ikoyi or your Lekki store, it's not going to be the same price with your Sules." I said, "No, all our branches, because we have a vision of, where we're global. In fact, even our third generation now, my daughter, you see, I tell people that I'm that child. I was born on the shop floor. So right from when my daughter too was, she started following me very early to the store. Once she comes back from school, straight to the store, because that was what we grew up in. Once we come back from school, you meet your mom. So the best way to get an inclusion is to involve your children early.
For these leaders, the secret sauce is not found on the balance sheet. It's found in values. They argue that without a clear system, our business is just a one-man show waiting to end.
Because that goal of getting to 100 years, the company getting to 100 years, I won't be alive at that time. Not even if I'm Donald Trump. So, for that reason, I'm telling them, if the company gets to 100 years, maybe my name is not anywhere, just put a small plaque, say, "Okay, this company was founded by Alfredo Koigu." Then that would have been the success at that time. So really, it's a long-time dream. It's tedious. It's tedious. Like Ascension said, you're ready to take the bitter pill. We are swallowing the bitter pill.
While governance and structure provide the skeleton, the final session focuses on the heartbeat, culture. This is the glue that keeps employees engaged and fuels the innovation needed to last for generations.
So people look at culture as something soft, but culture is actually the backbone of all family and other businesses. In institutions, corporate institutions, you will see that they have financial experts, they have people draw up program, they have people arrange everything. But when you come to family business, even if you have all those things and you have a bad culture that's already entrenched, those things will not work. They will not come to fruition. And culture also, we view as, when people say, that is how we do it here. That slang that people always say, no, that's how we do it here. That becomes the culture of that company. So if it's a wrong culture, it's already embedded. No amount of cash flow can change it. If your culture has been said that anybody that comes into from the family can join and become a manager because he's coming from the family. If you lay that foundation, it has become a foundation for that business. Any other person that comes will join. That is when culture becomes a trap.
From my perspective, I've learned that culture truly is what speaks when your founder is not around, right? Culture is what you've embedded into this system, into this business that you've built, that tells people what's important to you when you're not there saying that for yourself. And when my parents were building our hotel, they wanted to embody a culture of excellence as one of the many things that they valued. And so they ensured that in every aspect of the service, from how the food is prepared to how the beds are made, that there's excellence in that, and that when people came into this space, they didn't feel like they were just at, some mom and pop institution. And so they hired the best people. They ensured that everyone that they had was trained and performed excellently at all their tasks, from the cleaners to the general manager. And so that culture has stuck with us, a culture of excellence.
As the curtains fall on this session, African leaders must learn to build structure today or risk becoming another statistic in the high mortality rate of family firms.